What's going on, YouTubers? Welcome to another episode of Merricks Garage. I got a lot of stuff to update you on. The truck is doing well. The links are in. The frame is in. A lot of stuff is lining up, and I'm very happy with how it's coming together. I've been spending quite a bit of time on my electrical system for this build. As I am replacing pretty much the back half of the truck, I decided now is a good time to replace all the wiring. Fuel pump, brake lights, trailer, reverse, rock lights, you name it, anything electrical that's pretty much behind the driver's seat, I'm building a harness for and installing and getting everything hooked up. So I know electrical doesn't sound that exciting, but it is incredibly fulfilling. And it's kind of like a Zen moment when you really get into the groove. I'll show you what I mean. I enjoy electrical. I think you guys will too. It's a good episode. Click that subscribe button, click that like button. Go grab one of my hats off my store, merricksgarage.com, and let's go get it. I understand why electrical can be intimidating. Heck, I was there for a long time. Electrical was just a dark place where fuses went bad, ground showed up, and things caught on fire. I took it upon myself several years back to really try and wrap my head around electrical, and I still have a long way to go. But what I have learned is electricity is incredibly predictable. Heck, it's a force of nature, literally. And it just creates a circuit. A circuit is just a loop. So you got this circle made out of wire that you introduce various things into, like switches, fuses, resistors, relays, capacitors, all different kinds of stuff. And they each have a purpose. And once you understand what that purpose is, you can pretty much figure out what that electrical circuit's going to do. Correspondingly, when it's not working properly, it's pretty easy to kind of work your way backwards and figure out what's gone wrong. Now, that doesn't mean it's always simple. The problem with electrical is it's often hidden. You may have a short somewhere that you're never going to find because it's buried in the middle of your harness, which is why I wanted to build my own harness. Building my own harness gives me the ability to become very familiar with the harness, how it lays, where the problem areas might be, and also make sure that I've got adequate protection on any area that's going to come in contact with something that could rub it, get the electrical connector off, or create a short. So don't sweat if you really don't have any idea about electrical. We'll jump into it a little bit, and I'll hopefully demystify some of it for you guys. When it comes to electrical, one of the first places I like to head is West Marine. Now, I am fortunate to live in a town with a harbor. Here in Santa Barbara, we have several West Marine stores. If you don't have one in your area, they have a great website, and if it's good enough for Marine, it's gonna be good enough for the K30Blazer. I'm heading to the West Marine store down at our harbor right now to poke around and pick up some electrical stuff for them. Heat shrink connectors, bus bars, things like that work really, really well. And the marine grade stuff is just head and shoulders above the stuff you can find at O'Reilly and things like that. Right behind me is one of the reasons I love coming down to West Marine to get the marine grade stuff. The marine grade, obviously they've got a lot more riding on it. You don't want to be stranded out in the middle of the ocean because of a bad terminal. So the marine grade stuff is really, really good. It isn't cheap. The Blue Sea that you see a ton of, yeah, not cheap, but it's really good stuff. And you always don't need to get a massive amount of things. You can get by with just some basic stuff. So let me show you what I've picked up here, and we'll discuss the plan quickly about how this is gonna plug into the truck when I get back home. This should be enough to get me finished on some of the harnesses down here, and I've also picked up this power post connector. This connector is going to give me the ability to put a negative on the frame that everything can tee into. Ignore the color of the boot, I'm going to change that out. But this will allow me to run a negative terminal that I know I'm going to have a good ground for all the stuff I'm wiring in the back. And I'm going to be running this guy, just a mini bus bar that will have 12 volts going to it and have growth in the back of the truck without having to rewire everything. Today, we're dealing with some pretty basic electrical. We're going to have a fuse, we're going to have some connections, we're going to have a bulb and a ground. I mean, that's all there really is. In the case of electricity, it has to find a ground. It has to find an area where it can earth and neutralize the electrical charge that's being carried through it. With a vehicle, that earth, that ground is most likely going to be your frame. So you're going to be running a wire from your battery to your fuse panel to the accessory that you're trying to power down to your frame to ground it out. Anything that you add in the middle of that, whether it be a switch, whether it be a relay, whether it be a diode, all will have a purpose. But for this example, we're working with some pretty basic stuff. I'm installing my brake lights, my reverse lights, my rock lights, my running lights, and an accessory bus. Pretty basic stuff. But the attention to detail is what matters with electrical. You only get one chance to do it before you install it, so just do it right. Take your time, learn how to solder, learn how to make a good crimp, learn how to use an electrical meter, and you're on your way. And all three of those things I just hit you with are very, very simple to use. I'm just wrapping up a multimeter video that I will have for you guys hopefully in the next month or so. And then I'll start tackling some of the smaller little things, some of the areas that I found confusing when I jumped into electrical, but have since kind of conquered and moved on. Wiring to me is like a good paint job. It shows that you care about what you've done. And I've always been intrigued by wiring because I was super intimidated by it. So I figure I'm going to tackle this first on my grand scheme of building my own harness and doing all that. I did do all the electrical in my truck when I did the LS swap. I replaced everything, but it wasn't all that clean, and a bunch of stuff has never really worked properly. So I'm building a harness that will give me the ability to connect and disconnect it from certain segments. So I can pull the taillights out, for example, if I smash one, and quickly and easily replace it because I'm going to have built-in connectors. And yeah, I've just got basic tools, pliers, wire cutters, a couple of different crimpers, but they're all pretty much the same crimper. I've been putting them all together with these connectors. I picked this up for like 10 bucks on Amazon, and you just basically put your own little connectors together. And yeah, and this is what it ends up looking like. This is going to be the rear harness, and this will be the master harness coming out of the front fuse. And yeah, this connects together really quite nicely when I do it properly. These are called service loops. They're basically a way of giving yourself a bunch of extra wires should you need to do some work, integrate something, splice it. Really cool idea. I don't know why I hadn't thought of doing something like that in the past, but yeah, it looks really cool and gives you a nice clean harness. And then I've twisted everything together, which is how I've seen it done, and so it must be correct if it's on Instagram, right? For the running and the reverse, I have to provide two splices out. So this green wire will have to provide power to both the right and the left. And same for this light brown. This light brown will have to provide power to the reverse on the left and the right. Now, sorry, I got that backwards, but the challenge is going to be making these guys run all the way across. So what I've done is I did a double splice into the connector on this side. These are both going to get single splices. So this light brown pigtail, this has to do all my running lights. So I'm going to have a running light in the tail light. I'm going to have these really cool little LEDs for my license plate. And then I'm going to have running lights on the other side of the truck. So what I'd like to be able to do with this license plate is be able to take this off, and with different pigtails all over the place, be able to move my license plate as I need to. So I've got one of the 2-pin connectors already. Part of this light brown will splice into here with another 2-pin connector, and part of it will continue on to the other side for the other light. And here is the bus bar I picked up. This is just a connection point for positive terminals. This blue line right here is my open accessory. Most likely going to end up using it for the rock lights. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this directly to here, which will give me all 4 of these mounts to run accessories off of. So after all that wire twisting, heat shrinking, planning, thinking, soldering, crimping, I have the harness laid out as it's gonna run. I have a couple more connectors to put on. I'm waiting for some more heat shrink to show up before I can put the connectors on. That's part of what the challenge with this is. You really have to plan out. You can't just plow in and start throwing connectors on and plugging things in, because then you'll realize that you haven't left any room for growth. You haven't put the heat shrink on. You now can't get it over the top of the connector to heat shrink the wire. There's a lot of things coming together, and you got to make sure you plan it out. It's not that much of a challenge. It just requires a little bit of forethought, which is kind of fun. Planning it is part of the fun, I think. So this is how we're coming together. You'll see this is the harness that's going to plug into the harness of my truck. I got a bunch of wires underneath the truck right now. You can see that those will get plugged into here. Out of this harness, I am going to have right and left brake lights. I'm going to have right and left reverse. I'm going to have running lights, and I'm going to have ground and room for growth. I will have accessory room for growth. I've got a separate harness that I've built that will bring power for my turn signals. But this is where the main harness runs. This connector will enable me to DC it up near the frame rail. I'm probably going to mount this guy to the body, and this guy will enable me to separate the frame from the body with a connector right here. So coming off this 6-pin connector, we are going to have the the passenger side brake light, and we are going to have an accessory bus. This is going to be a 12-volt circuit. From this 12-volt, I'm going to be able to run whatever else I need to. I can put power to a switch, and then I can run a ground switch for that device. It just gives me accessible 12-volt in the back of the truck without having to run more wires. It's future-proofing is what that is. So moving back from the 6-link connector, we got those 2 that peel out. Moving over, you get to this 4-pin connector. This 4-pin connector, this one gets kind of confusing, because out of this 4-pin, which is going to give me brake lights, it's going to give me reverse lights, it's going to give me LEDs, and it's going to give me running lights. Out of these 4, I've got to connect not just to the driver's side, but I've also got to connect to the passenger side. The way I got around that, as I showed you earlier, was to do a double pin into here, giving me 2 green and 2 brown. One of them runs up to here, and the other 2 come out, offering me the run over to the rest of the truck. So coming up here, you'll see I've got my running lights, I've got my brake lights, I have my running lights, brake lights, and reverse lights all hooked up. The ground is common, comes to this ground wire. I haven't decided whether I'm going to take this ground wire just straight to the hardware right here, which is probably the easiest way, or keep everything in one loom. And then when we come over here, you'll see that I haven't spliced this all together yet because I don't have the more heat shrink, but the brown wire continues to bring power to the running lights right here. So I've got these that will come on when the running lights are activated, these 2 little LED markers. And out of the connection that I put in, you'll see I've got ground coming in on one side, power coming on the other side. Ground comes out. This will get connected to a common ground, which is what that post that I showed you is for. This connects in to bring power. Continuing on, this guy will head over to the other side where the passenger side light is going to be. This will bring in braking, and the green will bring in the reverse. The brown will bring in the running lights. What I'm hoping this will solve for me is a very, very clear and concise wiring harness that I know up here. Also, should something go wrong, I can disconnect everything, pull the whole harness out, and troubleshoot it on my bench instead of crawling around in the mud under my truck trying to figure out why it's not working. So this could all blow up on my face spectacularly and nothing will work and I'll fry my whole truck, but I kind of doubt it. So yeah, really fun project. This falls under one of those categories of do something every day. I can't work on my truck every day because of work, but every night I can come home and tinker a little bit with this, and one step closer, one step closer, one step closer. And so when I do come to do all the electricals, I've just got a harness that just plugs in. It's gonna be pretty cool. I don't want you guys to think that I have forgotten about my updates on the truck. I have been in electrical world for a while, but I still got a bunch of stuff done on the truck. I got a to-do list that I'll show you guys briefly that details where I am and where I need to go. Let me show you where we are. I have the axle in place right now. My wheelbase at this point is coming in at about 108 inches. I still need to do some adjustment to the link length. My outboard link length appears to be what I think to be about half an inch too long. If I cut an inch off of this, extended the heim out down there, this is going to allow this to clock down the axle tube to get me the placement, which is about 1 inch above center line. So that's coming in good. I need to adjust my pinion angle, need to bring that up a little bit. Apparently you do not want to have your pinion angle exactly the same as your drive shaft angle, because then you will not get any lubrication in the U-joint needle bearings as they won't be turning. Moving under the truck, let's crawl under here. What is noticeable is that the frame is shifted over a little bit to the driver's side. That's a result of where it's captured underneath on the frame. Let me show you. You'll see from looking at this angle, the frame is shifted over to the driver's side just a little hair more than it is on the passenger side. That's a result of this part of the frame just interfering with the bracket. So I'm gonna need to just window this right here. Not a big deal. I do want to keep this as flat as I can so I can get some welds dug down into there to get really good bite. But let's go, let's take a look at the to-do list that I put together, and we'll walk through that pretty quickly. Measure front and rear link mount bolts, 12 inches front and rear back of mount. This means I want to keep the link brackets 12 inches apart. The back of the front link bracket to the back of the rear link bracket should be 12 inches. Once I've got that set up on the frame, I'm going to be able to determine how long my links are going to be. Cut out that bottom plate of the frame to allow it to slide in more. Measure, measure, measure. I want to measure these link lengths from the front passenger and the rear passenger to the hub, and the same on the other side. That's going to give me a bunch of different measurements that I can start to circle back on and make sure everything is matching. 2 inches off the back of the frame rails. I'll show you that in a sec, what I'm talking about. Center the frame, passenger to driver. Measure, 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 measure. And then once I have it measured down, I'm going to clamp the frame down securely using some C-clamps and channel clamps to really make sure that it is fixed in place exactly where I need it to be. Then it will get scribed and marked at all those specific points, so that when I go to reinstall it after all the welding and painting, I know that it's going to shine back up perfectly. The catalytic converters need to be cut out because they're interfering with the link mounts right now. They're going to get relocated. The whole exhaust is going to be redone. The links need to be mounted with all the hardware. Right now they're held in place by screwdrivers and other things because I can't get the bolts in because the cats are still in the way. Measure the drop on the axle tube for the outer links. Like I spoke about there, we need to drop these links down about 2 inches probably. Cutting off a half inch off of all the links, determining my pinion angle, verify the angle on the pinion and the drive shaft, make sure that I've got about a 2-degree differential, and left, right, centered axle, measure the wheelbase. Probably going to go for about 108 to 109. That's going to put me about an inch or 2 inches over factory. So let me show you what I'm talking about when it comes to the rear frame rails, because they are hung up slightly underneath the body itself, and I would like to get that fixed. So it's going to be kind of hard to see. Wow, this new camera really does make a big difference. Yeah, so they're interfering a little bit. I'm probably just going to cut maybe an inch off. You can see it's interfering on the other side too. That may be remedied when the frame gets pulled in about another half-inch, quarter-inch. It may start clearing. If I can leave these guys the length they are, that's fine. I actually kind of like the way they're sitting, and the farther out I can get them, the better. But yeah, just nothing huge to do, just some minor stuff. And that's what this weekend's going to be about. The harness is pretty much finished, so I want to be able to get the frame exactly where it needs to be, start scribing, marking, cutting, and getting everything back down to original, or the length that it's going to be when the truck is back on the road. And one other cool thing, one of the potential downsides and drawbacks of running rear links is having to come up through the floor with shock hoops and shocks and a cross brace to get the travel needed for the coilovers. They're a lot taller. With the level of height in lift that I'm running, which is probably going to end up between 6 and 8 inches, I'm thinking I might be able to sneak the shocks in without having cut the floor. That would be awesome. Let me show you how I think I might be able to accomplish that. This is the PVC pipe that I cut down. It's the same length as the shock will be, eyelet to eyelet, bolt to bolt. And looking at my numbers right now, this is how it would line up. That's without cutting the floor. That's what I want to be able to do. I'm going to mount this guy JK style really deep down here. It's going to be nice and tucked out of the way because the wheel's there and all the brakes and everything. And then I will go build a big burly skid plate mount right here to support all this. So this will get boxed in and built in and basically create a big giant skid box. But being able to keep it inside and not have to cut up through the floor, leaving the back of my truck all open and available, would be pretty sweet. So fingers crossed on that one. The truck build is coming along nicely. The frame is lining up well, the electrical's looking good. I have most of the parts I need to put this thing back together. I'm just looking forward to throwing some time at it and getting the frame burned in, getting the link length set, getting the harness all hooked up, and getting this thing back on the road. We'll talk to you next week. Merricks Garage.